Welcome back to podcast listeners, and hello to anyone watching this on YouTube. You are watching / listening to the Main Street Vegan podcast. We're first an internet radio show every Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And you know, we have been doing this since June of 2012. We are going to have an incredible 10th anniversary celebration coming up in a few months, but I feel like every single show is a celebration. It's a celebration of love and caring and this amazing vegan lifestyle. So I am Victoria Moran, host for this program, for those of you who are just tuning in now. And my wonderful guest is Annick Ireland, and she is someone who believes that fashion needs to be as good as it looks. Immaculate Vegan, her company, is the world's premier vegan fashion and lifestyle platform for living beautifully and ethically. And they're on a mission. They love fashion, and they don't just like what it does for the planet, animals, and people. They decided to help change the system and offer an ethical and sustainable alternative without compromising quality or style. Welcome, Annick Ireland.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction.
Well, it is absolutely delightful to have you. And I just have to say, I love the name of your company. Probably because I used to be a little Catholic girl, but that whole idea of it's not just good, it's not just pure, it's not just ethical, it is immaculate. So how did you come up with that?
Yeah, well, I think it's that double meaning, isn't it? I think it's the idea that, you know, you can make choices that are ultimately good choices for people that aren't you, right? For people, for animals, for the environment. But you don't have to compromise and pick things that, you know, wear clothes that look really horrible or unfashionable or of poor quality. You can look immaculate as well. And I think that's often something that puts people off buying ethical and sustainable fashion. There's this kind of myth that it's going to be really frumpy, you know, or it's just going to be awful quality, or it's going to be, you know, PVC, plasticky, nasty leather. And so people sort of, you know, they've got all these kind of misconceptions that I think maybe stop them even trying sometimes. And we're just here to shatter all of those myths and say that's not true at all. You can look amazing, you can look immaculate, and you can be immaculate.
Wow. And I think it's just like vegan cheese. I mean, I remember the days when both vegan cheese and vegan fashion were just what you're saying. The fashion was a lot of Chinese Mary Jane shoes made out of cloth. I think my podiatrist is getting rich because I used to wear those shoes. And, you know, the cheese was, I mean, worse than Velveeta. But now it's a whole new world. And everything is just not only possible, but superior in the vegan realm. So tell us first about yourself and how did you get here?
Yeah, so well, I became vegan about 6 years ago, and it was sort of quite slowly. I'd become vegetarian first, and that was really triggered by my getting a rescue greyhound, and it was really through my relationship with my dog, which sounds, you know, quite strange, but I think for many people, the connection people have to the wider animal world is through their pets, right? And it just somehow kind of made me realize that, you know, of course, I would hate anything or anyone to ever harm her. And yet, how could I therefore be part of the system that was routinely harming animals that really, you know, felt as much joy and as much suffering as she did? So that was the kind of light bulb moment for me. And then when I became vegan, so food was the kind of the, you know, the obvious area. And I found that really quite easy, to be honest. I mean, 6 years ago, you know, it's not that long ago, there were loads of amazing options. There are even more now. But fashion, when I started, you know, searching online for things like vegan shoes, vegan bags, I thought this is going to be fine. And what I was seeing back was just kind of what you just described, right? Those kind of, you know, very, very limited options, not very stylish, looked really poor quality. And so I was just thinking, oh no, this is good. This is going to be really tricky. And then I just started to really invest some time researching properly. So I spent time on Instagram, you know, on the web. And what I found was that there are actually many, many brands out there, boutique brands, you know, run by very passionate founders who are often product designers first and foremost, making beautiful things from some amazing materials that I had never heard of, like apple leather and pineapple leather and cactus leather. So really innovative, really cutting edge, gorgeous things, but they just were really poorly known. And they didn't really have a platform, I don't think. So that was the idea behind it. So I started Immaculate Vegan just purely as an Instagram blog to essentially curate and show people how amazing vegan fashion could be, so that no one would do that search that I did and be put off and think, oh, I'm not going to bother. And then it just really took off, and brands contacted me and said, we'd love to be on your platform. And lots of individuals were contacting me saying, I had no idea vegan fashion looked this amazing. I'm going to give it a try. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could buy it all in one place? And that was the sort of the genesis of the idea. And I was very lucky to find an amazing co-founder, my partner Simon, and who I met a few years ago, who'd also sort of coincidentally said, look, I'm vegan. Why don't we do this business together? And we launched 2 years ago, and it's been an amazing, amazing journey ever since.
So explain to me, this is sort of a new business model, that you're like a curator. You find these amazing things and then you offer them. So where do we find all this, for starters?
Yeah, so our website is immaculatevegan.com, and we're on all the social channels at Immaculate Vegan. We're essentially, people are familiar with Farfetch. There are other marketplaces like that out there. Farfetch is a really massive luxury fashion one. Essentially, it's the same model. So the only difference between us and a major online retailer is that we don't physically hold stock ourselves. So when you place an order, we send the order to the brand, and the brand sends it directly to you. And that cuts out an enormous amount of carbon emissions and all kinds of unsustainable operations, like having lots of different warehouses all over the world, and all of that kind of stuff. And you get it super quickly as well, because it comes straight from the brand. So that's essentially the only difference between us and, let's say, another online department store. But we are also really curated. So, we're not like an Amazon. We hand select every single brand. We spend a lot of time talking to them to really understand all their different processes, their ethical labor practices, because that's really important to us as well. Obviously, they have to be 100% vegan. So we really make sure that we're picking the sort of, the creme de la creme of brands that are really, that meet our values, I think.
And that was what I was going to ask next, that in addition to vegan, what sorts of parameters do you have? I think that we don't want shopping to be this like, oh my gosh, it's sort of like looking for, what charities do we want to support? And we need to do all this research, and everything seems so onerous. But to know that there's a source like Immaculate Vegan, where all that work has been done, and we can just say, if it looks good, if it's my color, if I like it, I can have it.
That's really the aim. I think so many people now, they really want to buy better. They know that so many things that we buy are harming the planet or harming animals, or are made by people who aren't paid or treated properly. So they don't want any of that. But it's so hard to make decisions. To do that research yourself all the time is just overwhelming. So that's exactly our aim. We have a strict set of policies. We make it clear on our website what they are. So they are obviously 100% vegan. Sustainable materials as well, because not everything vegan is sustainable at all. Sustainable manufacturing. So, things like, it can be really, it really differs according to the product, but, sustainable manufacturers use factories that, for example, have closed loop technology where everything is recycled. They'll only use, for example, certain types of dyes. They'll have minimal water usage, minimal water wastage. So there's all kinds, solar energy. There's lots of ways that you can also manufacture really sustainably as well. And then packaging as well, sustainable packaging. And of course, ethical labor is absolutely key as well. So those are all the different kind of buckets that we look at when we're talking to brands before we allow a brand to come on board with Immaculate Vegan. So yeah, we've done that work.
Now, do you have a sense of who your customer is? It seems to me that very often vegan is a very positive word when used to describe a wonderful food, when used to describe fashion, body care items. Maybe not such a great word often when describing a person out there in the world. A lot of people, they love our food, they love our clothes, they're just not so sure about us. So who's your customer?
It's actually really varied. I thought it would be, mainly vegan, but actually we have a lot of customers that are, I think, environmentally conscious is probably the sort of the most common, I would say, characteristic. So they're not necessarily coming at it purely from animal welfare, although I think that does matter to people, but they're obviously really concerned about climate change now and the climate crisis. They see issues around deforestation, around how we're harming wildlife. So they don't want to be part of that. So they're really attracted to buying non-leather items, for example. But also people are just, I think even just fashion conscious people are hearing about some of the new kinds of vegan leathers, and they're really attracted to them. You know, they're seeing that big, you know, luxury brands like Stella McCartney and Karl Lagerfeld are using cactus leather, and that's making it really fashionable and really trendy. You know, Tesla are using non-animal leathers in their cars. So I think it's seen as a really progressive, really interesting and innovative area as well. I think a lot of people are really attracted to that, which is brilliant because that's really helping elevate vegan fashion, I think.
So did you have a fashion background or just a great fashion interest?
No fashion background whatsoever. So my background is marketing and branding. So that obviously does really help. And my business partner, Simon, his background is also marketing and e-commerce. So from a business point of view, we were kind of, you know, working in this sort of similar space, but no, nothing really specifically with fashion. I think we just found that, you know, we both interested in, really love fashion, and we just felt it was so underserved. I mean, I think vegan food now, thankfully, is in such a good place, and it's getting better all the time. There are so many amazing companies, but vegan fashion isn't quite there yet. And again, it doesn't really necessarily, even though there are great brands, and again, there are more launching all the time, there aren't many great platforms to showcase those brands, and that's what's really needed to take them en masse. So we just saw there was just a really big gap, and we thought we want to help fill that gap. There's a commercial opportunity, but also ultimately there's a problem, because if people don't see those kinds of brands, they're going to continue to buy into leather and wool and silk and all those really harmful materials, and we don't want that to happen, you know. So we can have we can be a mission-driven company that really tries to change things, but there's a gap here where we think we can run a successful business as well.
I love this. And I love like the evolution of what's happening, because I started my career in fashion. I actually moved to London to go to fashion school when I was 18. And I remember a book that I read at that time where the author said, "You're as good as your leather." And at that time, that seemed like a reasonable thing to say.
Yeah.
But as individuals, and now as the whole, you know, population is starting to have a higher consciousness and understanding, that's not a thing, leather. That was somebody's skin. And in between being an animal and being a handbag, there's a tanning process and probably human rights violations and all kinds of environmental awful things going on. And to be able to see that we're now in a time where you're as good as your ethics is just
I like that. I like that. I might steal that. That's great.
Good. You can do leather. Well, that's the thing, you know, the idea, I think it's a little bit like on the health side. You know, there are people who are not vegan in their health views, physicians, and that they're pro keto or whatever, but they really cannot claim to be holistic, because how could you be holistically healthy when you're destroying this planet on which everybody's health depends? And I think it's the same with fashion. I mean, unless you want to look like Cruella de Vil, you can't be chic, you can't be glamorous unless you're also kind.
And I think that's a really important point, because I think the goal of everyone that works in vegan fashion is to position vegan fashion in exactly that way. You know, that it is the most fashionable kind of fashion. It is the most attractive. And actually, leather, how old-fashioned, right? You know, how 10th century is that? You know, we don't need that anymore. We've got grape leather now. We've got cactus leather. So I think it's really positioning vegan fashion as the kind of the zeitgeist, the thing that everyone should be wearing, rather than, you know, oh, you should do it because it's just good, you know, it's good for the planet. I think you need to position it in a really compelling way.
Yes, absolutely. So what is your greatest achievement to date?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think we've got many. I mean, the fact that, you know, we're still here through COVID. We launched just before COVID. So we weathered that, you know, horrendous storm, and come out much stronger. We've actually managed to grow hugely in that time. And I think we've been very lucky in a way, because, you know, in some way, COVID has actually shone a light on what we're doing to our planet, and the impact between, you know, human behavior and our environment. So that, I think, is actually, you know, helps get more exposure around the vegan cause in some way. I would say really our biggest achievement is it's what I feel most proud of is when I get an email from a customer, and we get, you know, we do get quite a few people saying, you know, thank you for what you're doing for vegan fashion. And the fact that I think there was one quote that I really liked, which was, a woman who said, I went to a party and I was wearing these amazing shoes, and somebody said, how gorgeous are your shoes? And she's like, oh, and thank you, they're vegan. It's like, it just feels so good to be able to say that, because that's how you're really acting as an advocate. Just because we're vegan, it doesn't mean we want to look rubbish. We want to look really good. And that's how we can show people that this is what vegan fashion looks like. So yeah, it's just the customers. We have some amazing customers. We've got people that have bought from us. I think we have one that's bought from us 22 times, who's, we've got some super fans, and it's those that I think really, it makes you think you're doing something really, really good and really right, and people really like what you're doing. So we just need to keep going.
Oh, I loved your story about your customer. Several years ago, I saw some amazing vegan boots, and they were expensive. And I thought, this is ridiculous. You don't need boots, even though when you fold over the cuffs, they're periwinkle blue. And I couldn't get them out of my mind. And I went back the next day and bought them. And I feel that they have been such an activism tool, because everywhere I go, people, all different kind of ages and demographics, oh my God, they're boots. I love your boots. Your boots are just so cool. And every person I get to say, why, thank you. And they're vegan. So why not? Why not use these things as a way to save animals and the planet fashionably?
So yeah.
You're in marketing, so I'm sure you have some kind of 5-year plan, and we're at the new year right now, and happy Epiphany to people who are listening as soon as this podcast is being broadcast. So what's your plan going forward?
Oh, well, I mean, ultimately our plan is to become, this sounds quite grand, but to become the platform for ethical and sustainable living. So right now we are very focused on fashion, because that was a very obvious area where there was a problem, I think, and we wanted to help solve that problem. We've really concentrated on shoes and bags, because they're the sort of areas often made of leather where people really struggle. We've just launched men's. We're launching kids next year. So that's a big gap as well. But really, we want to be able to inform and inspire people on how to lead a more ethical and sustainable life. Because we know people want to, but it's really hard sometimes. They don't know necessarily what to do, how to do it, and they can't always find the products and services. So what we want to do is essentially answer all those problems for them.
And can people order from all over the world?
They can. So by far our biggest markets are the UK and the US, but we do ship, or most of our brands ship to lots of other places as well, including all over Europe, and some other places, including Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Hong Kong, a couple of others as well, Japan, I think, as well. So yeah, so we're pretty global. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's how we're going to get a vegan world, by doing this everywhere.
That's what I'll say, right? A vegan world.
So our guest in the first segment of the Main Street Vegan podcast today was Matthew Glover, who was a founder of Veganuary. And I know that you guys are doing something in January of 2022 to support Veganuary, to do some work together. What's that about?
Yeah, so we'll be doing a bit of a Veganuary takeover on our site. We'll become Immaculate Veganuary, new logo. We'll be doing lots of great offers. We're doing some content that we're sharing with Veganuary as well, about how to lead a vegan lifestyle, how to take Veganuary, into fashion, and just doing everything we can to kind of help spread the word and get more signups for them as well. I mean, ultimately, we have exactly the same goals. I'm hugely impressed by what they've done over the past few years. I think they're amazing. I also love Matthew's company, VFC. I think they're probably the best marketing, they have the best marketing campaign, the best marketing messaging ever. Such good activist brands. So yeah, I think we really love working with other vegan brands and vegan organizations.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I want to talk with you a little bit about style, because obviously we're both fascinated by fashion, and yet we're both wearing black sweaters. So there's something about
burgundy. There we go. I've got a little bit of color.
You do. That's cool. But there's something very appealing about simplicity. So tell me about your style and how that works in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you can kind of see my style, the Immaculate Vegan style, really, and it's generally very classic and quite minimalist. And I've always kind of been into that kind of style. But actually what I realized with Immaculate Vegan is I sort of think it's the most sustainable as well. So, you know, one way to be sustainable is obviously to, you know, to buy things themselves that are made in as sustainable way as possible, if you're going to buy anything at all. But also it's to buy as little as possible. And by, you know, if you're going to not buy many things, you want everything you do buy to really count. You know, you want it to last as long as possible in terms of quality, but also style. So I'm not really into any kind of fast fashion styles at all. I'm into very classic items. You know, I tend to have quite a minimalist wardrobe, very kind of, you know, a few colors, a lot of black. Although I do like some really lovely, you know, rich autumny winter shades as well. But yeah, not very trend led, I would say. But I think that's also, for me, that ties into sustainability as well. I love things that you can wear for, you know, 20, 30 years quite happily.
I've had a few things like that. And I'm thinking as you talk about when I was in London for fashion school so long ago, one of our teachers was from Paris. So of course we just were in awe, and she did look fabulous every day. And one Saturday she had several of us over for lunch. And when she was in the kitchen, we snuck into the bedroom to look in her closet, thinking that we were going to find this giant closet with all of these clothes. And instead, it was this lovely little closet with 2 jackets, 2 dresses, 3 blouses, 2 pairs of pants on these padded hangers with 1.5 inches in between. And that was such a visual lesson of how little it takes to look amazing every day if what you have is quality and fits you. And certainly what we're saying now, you know, fits this emerging character that we're all growing into of caring about other beings and the earth itself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's my ideal, right? That kind of minimalist wardrobe. But I think, you know, you hear like the tales of how many billion tons of items go, you know, fast fashion clothing goes into landfill every year. We cannot sustain the volume of stuff that we're buying. And so I think, yeah, we've got to somehow break the cycle of, you know, it's constant fashion all the time. You need to buy into the latest trends, and the trends change every month. And, you know, there's a very, very high volume of very, very low priced, ultimately designed to fall apart after a couple of wears kind of clothing. So I think that structurally the system is pretty broken and needs to change. So it's not just about being vegan. Obviously for us that's really key, but it's the whole structure of the fashion system, I think. And in a way it's kind of going back to a much older system of you know, that very beautiful, immaculate, minimalist style, isn't it? It's not, you know, it's not a new, we don't have to invent something new. We just kind of need to go back to some older concepts of what style was really about.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful marriage of this relatively new idea of compassionate fashion and the classic idea of some perfect pieces. And I know Joshua Catcher of Brave Gentle Man always says, when you're buying something, buy the best you can possibly afford. Just don't buy very much. And if you need other things, just do a resale, do secondhand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my mum had a saying when she was growing up that she sort of gave to me, which was, I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things.
Aha.
And I really like that, because it is a false economy, ultimately, if you're buying cheap things. You know, buy the best you can afford. And obviously that's different for different people, but you can, you know, you can still buy really high quality stuff secondhand as well.
Yeah.
And make it last.
So tell us, and am I saying your name correctly, Annick?
You are saying correctly, yeah. Which is
beautiful, beautiful name. Tell us about your day. What's it like being a vegan fashionista at the heart of vegan business?
Well, most of the time I'm not very fashionably dressed. I'm normally sort of because I work from home like all our team do. But I mean, it's very busy, but it's really, really varied. I absolutely love it. So I could be, you know, researching new brands to come on board. I do all the marketing myself. So I could be writing social posts, doing emails, working with our digital agency who are running our ads, talking to our PR consultants, having a team meeting, getting new products on board. So I mean, when you run a very small business and we only have a team of 5 permanent people, we all just have to get really stuck into everything. But I think I wouldn't have it any other way. It's incredibly rewarding.
I love it. I love it. And I love this tagline you have: fashion that's as good as it looks.
That's the aim. Exactly.
It's meaningful. I love the idea of everything that we do, whatever we eat, whatever we wear, whatever we do for recreation, it's not just what it is, it's also what it does.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think that really resonates with people now, doesn't it? I think we're seeing more and more people that are really aware of the impact of the choices that they have, and are making those connections. I think,
Yes.
I still think it's hard. I mean, a lot of people find it very hard to connect an item they're wearing to that person who might have made it in a factory in Bangladesh, for example.
Yes.
But I think there are so many good organizations now that are exposing what happens and showing the lives of those people. And it's just about making those, human connections in the same way that you make those animal connections to animals that are being farmed as well. So yeah, thankfully there's a lot of great work happening in all those areas, but a lot more to be done still.
Oh, well, I'm so excited that you're there. Everybody, it is immaculatevegan.com. I mean, come on, if you went to Catholic school, you've got to at least go to the website just to see what Immaculate Vegan looks like. And they are Immaculate Vegan on all social media platforms. So thank you, Annick, and thanks to Matthew Glover. We got to get some of those VFC burgers going on. They're
I've tried
really
great.
Yeah, I just tasted one. I've already said this to Matthew, so the other listeners have heard this, but that is one chicken-like burger.
It's
and
good.
Hopefully it's just going to save lots of chickens and open lots of minds. So may you have great success. Let's do stay in touch. I'm certainly going to go over to Immaculate Vegan and do a little bit of New Year's shopping. And to everybody listening, oh my goodness, it's almost Epiphany. That means you're supposed to have an awakening. So maybe your epiphany this year will be your diet. Maybe it will be your clothing choices. Maybe it will be opening up to the idea that living kindly and gently and gracefully is just the coolest thing that ever was. So if you're watching on YouTube, I hope you'll subscribe, Victoria Moran NYC. And if you're listening as a podcast, thank you. And thanks to Unity Online Radio for making this possible for these just about 10 years. So to everybody, as you embark on this fabulous 2022, may it be grand and glorious. And as we always say, God bless you and eat your veggies.